I always say that painting and writing is the same thing, except, if you're a painter and you want $100 tube of paint, you go down to the store and there's one ingredient that you need, right? You need $100. And so, but if you're a writer and you there's $100 word, all you need is an artifact, and it's these old things called dictionaries, and you have to have a physical one. Yeah, there's online dictionaries, but don't waste your time with that, because a dictionary is giving you so much language, and you can thumb through it to find the $100 word as opposed to $5 words or $10 words, right? And those are sort of more abstract. And so, one example, I just want to kind of give an example of maybe what could be considered, like when you're looking for interesting words, I just open the page up to anything. And this always helps the music sort of come out or just begin, the beat, right? And so I look at a word like vain or vague, and they're just abstract. They're not really doing anything. But words like vibrator or village or violin, right? Those are better concrete words. And even though I have no idea what I'm going to use a vibrator or a village or a violin for, maybe I'll say, while the violin played at night, the entire village used a vibrator to cool bedroom beds with a buzz in the air, and moans were heard outside windows, right? So the language, because language is a system. One of my favorite poets, Lucille Clifton, in one of her poems says, say rather, I imagine a place before language incarcerated itself with words, right? So I want you to really think about that for a second. Before language incarcerated itself with words. So by having a system of language, we're limiting our ability to communicate or to express emotion, right? So we're trying to break that all the time. And similarly, because language is a system and makes meaning without us, I always try to say we need to get out of the way of ourselves, right? And let images do the heavy lifting, which is the making of the meaning. But also within language, there's an alphabet, and letters themselves have different sounds, right? So we're always looking for something different. So what I do, this is just a little trick that I kind of pass off to anyone who's listening, is I'll go to an anagram server, and it's in the chat so that you know where to go when you want to do it. But I thought it'd be fun to put LiTFUSE in the anagram thing, and I did. I just typed LiTFUSE, right? And then you get all of these sort of, you get multiple images, or not images, but language that all fits within LiTFUSE. So the word itself is LiTFUSE, but I like two fragments that came out. One was let if us feels it, right? It's totally bizarre. Let if us feels it. And then let if us feels it. Now all of a sudden that's become the rhythm. Let if us feels it in the night, in the day, as we swim. Let if us fuels it as we gather, as we pray, as we eat. Let us fuels it through words and language. Let us fuels it as we walk. Let us fuels it in our lives, in our communities, so rich. Our children, let us fuels it, right? So, and I had no idea. I would never have came up with that if I didn't put it in to the anagram server. So that's one way that we'll begin with getting out of the way of actual meaning, right? Secondly, just this is just review for all of you, I'm sure. But language matters, right? Energy is made up of subjects, leaping, and words, right? So words are those things. That's what I'm talking about there. But energy is also made from repetition. I don't know if you could have felt that energy. The let if us fuels it. It's so powerful. I mean, I'm literally still shaken by how powerful that is. Let if us fuels it, right? It's like it's a nurturing mantra, but it's also concrete. Other parts of energy are concrete action with words, right? So any sort of action that you can repeat, in an image is really, really good, right? Richard Hugo, you know, kind of the godfather of Northwest and his nuts and bolts triggering town book. Um, you know, and these are all just sort of the gist or sort of blended from the structure of it. But the music of the poetic line as form and function, right? And that music actually creates a parallel meaning other than what the word is saying. So one of the things that Hugo always talked about is never let the form of what you're doing never dominate your composition, right? Always let the music be the form. Never make the music go into a specific thing. So the form itself, the form of your composition follows the internal music of your cadence, of your breath, right? So what I would like us to do right now, if we could just do just for a couple minutes, a 2-minute prompt, I want you to find your poetic breath, a cadence, a fragment, an anaphora. Uh, maybe it's a common thing you say, or if you have access to that anagram server, the trick of the anagram server is to only put in a small word, right? You can't put in huge words; it'll go haywire. But or that, right? But I want everyone to generate some rhythmic piece similar to what I was sort of modeling with, you know, LiTFUSE becomes let if us fuels it. Let if us fuels it, right? And then take 2 minutes to do that. And Laura, as the participants are working on that, maybe we could cue up the Ginsberg poem Humbomb and see how an anaphora and repetition works, and then we can listen to that before we get a chance to share. And I would love if we get a chance to share some of this refrain or anaphora that's being created. Lean into your internal body. Think about your breath. Keep your breath and your body together. Take a leap of faith and let the thing come out of your mouth, right? And Laura, is there a way to share the anagram link? And do they have access to it so that they can take it home with them, or that the where to find it? I mean, I guess if you just do anagram server, it comes up. That's all I ever type.
I just put the link in the chat. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, awesome.
Okay. Just let me know when you're ready for the video. I've got it queued up.
Okay, let's hear it.
Humbang. Home bomb, we bomb them. 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 Home bomb, we bomb you. Home bomb, we bomb you. Home bomb, we bomb you. Home bomb, you bomb you. What did we do? Who did we bomb? 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 What did we do? You bombed them. What did we do? You bombed them. What did we do? We bombed you. What did we do? You bombed you. Why'd you bomb? We don't want to bomb. 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 Who said bomb? Who said we had a bomb? Who said bomb? Who said we had a bomb? Who said bomb? Who said we had a bomb? Who said bomb? Who said we had a bomb? Who wants a bomb? We don't want a bomb. Who wants a bomb? We don't want a bomb. Who wants a bomb? We don't want a bomb. Who wants a bomb? We don't want a bomb. Who wanted a bomb? Somebody must have wanted a bomb. Who wanted a bomb? Somebody must have wanted a bomb. Who wanted a bomb? Somebody must have wanted a bomb. Who wanted a bomb? Somebody must have wanted a bomb. They wanted a bomb. They needed a bomb. They wanted a bomb. They needed a bomb. They wanted a bomb. They needed a bomb. They thought they had 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 a bomb. Saddam said he had a bomb, Bush said he better bomb. Saddam said he had a bomb, Bush said he better bomb. Saddam said he had a bomb, Bush said he better bomb. Saddam said he had a bomb, Bush said he better bomb. What did he say better bomb for? What did he say better bomb for? What did he say he better bomb for? What did he say he better bomb for? Armageddon did the job. Gog and Magog. Gog and Magog. Armageddon did the job. Gog and Magog, Gog and Magog, Gog and Magog, Gog and Magog. Armageddon does the job. Armageddon for the mob. Gog and Magog, Gog and Magog. Armageddon for the mob. Gog and Magog, Gog and Magog, Gog and Magog, Gog and Magog, Gog Magog, Gog Magog, Gog and Magog, Gog and Magog, Gog Magog, Gog Magog. Ginsburg says, Gog and Magog, Armageddon did the job.
All right, so you see it creates energy. The energy rises, and so that was a lot of telling. I mean, often what I preach is whatever you want to say, you need to create an image for that, right? So often in these moments, if you have a composition you're working on or a draft, and you're unsure about the refrain or the music within it, maybe the question will be, what's the central question of the poem, right? What's the central question of the speaker of the poem? And whatever that answer is, it's similar to how Ginsburg is saying, why did we bomb? We need a bomb. Why did we bomb, right? And then when he gets into sort of the Gog Magog part of it, that's where it gets really interesting for me, because I like it when language gets blurry or pastel-y or collage-y, right? And there's always something within a cadence. A cadence will allow you as a writer or a audience or a reader to enter into some other space that's not, hopefully that's not conscious, right? One more little example of that, and this was, I always play with the anagram server, but I was writing a poem on the Columbia Basin pygmy rabbit, and they're tiny little pygmy rabbits, tiny little cute things. And so it also has a Latin name, and the Latin name was Brachylogus idahoenus, right? And that's interesting sound to me, but I wanted to put that through the server so it could get even more blurry, right? And then all these sort of results come up, and you look for the interesting results, right? And so the poem begins, ba decrying oil, ba hunched glossy iris, ba decrying oil. Ba, decrying hush soil. Ba, decrying hush oils. Ba, chloride gushy sins. Ba, chide hurling soys. Ba, lynched sow's iris. Right? And so it's the anaphora, it's the repetition, it's the spiritual entry in that can open up the meaning and the direction of your composition. So if we could have a few of you share with us, I don't know how you would do that, Laura. You can facilitate it maybe with raising a hand, and can let us hear the repetition that you're building with the sound and music within your internal body of thought and process.
Is there anybody interested? You can either use the emojis or unmute. I think people are shy.
Tiffany, you have anything? Or Ann Gwen, I see on the screen.
Wow, called out individually. Okay. Yeah, well, all right, here we go. So should I say what the word was that I put in the anagram?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I put in problems. I don't know, a phrase I say a lot is, yeah, well, that's the least of their problems. So I don't know. But problems, berm poles, berm slop, berm lops, berm slop, berms pole, lob sperm, lob perms, slob perm, lobs perm, problems, berm poles, berm slop, lob rep misses, belop misses, lob sperm, slob perm, berm lops, problems.
That was so good. Yes. Oh my gosh.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, so good. Okay, who's next? Let's keep them coming. Come on.
What are these poems called? This is the type of poem.
Cheyenne, is that you want to go?
I was just applauding Tiffany's poem.
Okay,
I see
Mark.
Mark.
Okay, I took my name, ran it through the anagram. Platinum trike. Oh, pretty upscale. Mailer tit punk. Norman would be pleased. Terminal kid up. Oh, I'm not doing very well. Talkie primnut. That pretty much hits me.
Yes. It's opening up different vibrations of the word itself, right? Again, language is a system. The alphabet is a system. And if you follow it, often the writing falls flat, fixed, or formed. And I think flat, fixed, form things, often belong in a coffin, right? We have graveyards for those kind of things. We want our language to be alive, to be leaping, to be moving, to be sort of entering into the body through the vibration, the sonic possibilities, and the orality of the sound, right? The first thing we had was sound, right? Before meaning was sound. Who else would like to go? Oh, I see Rob. Rob's here. Let's go, Rob.
I was just trying to click the button. I was just looking for it this whole time. I think I have something very short, and I'll read that. The words that I put into a anagram generator were Athena and Mithras. I've been kind of studying those, you know, those folk tales and things, and like the history of the cult of Mithras and how that paralleled Christianity and all that, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so those are the words, Athena and Mithras. And it came out with, or this is what I found there. Amaranth heist shite. Anathema thrash, thrash and thrash. As Matthias in his ancient faith hath, as a heart springs in the winter, hindered, metatarsi tense, then loose, a flopping, billowing rubber band. And that's what I have. Thanks.
Who's next?
Lynn was raising her hand earlier. Lynn, did you still want to jump in? You'll have to unmute.
Okay, so I'd like to jump in and ask how to use the anagram machine because I missed that part.
So there should be Lynn, there should be a link to it in the chat, and then
I
you just
see that.
Yep, and then you just click on that, and it should take you there, and then it'll give you a little box, like a little tiny text box that you can put. The key again, it's really important that you don't put too many words. You know, the kind of the more the smaller the word. I don't know if it's the better, but if you overload it with, like, you know, I walk through the woods, it's probably not going to give you any results back. But if you put in I walk, then you'll get all this stuff for I walk, right? And again, we're talking about, for me anyways, it's a process of charging up the composition, right? Subjects, words, leaps, music, anaphora, repetition. That'll charge your piece up, and it'll open up the dimensional space that you are commanding as you are, you know, I always say performing, but as you are reciting your poetry, right? And it'll take you to places that you just wouldn't have gone on your own, which is always the most special thing for me, is the process and the discovery in the process. That's like dating. It's like way better than the final thing, which maybe we'll say is, I don't want to say marriage, but you know, it's just so much more fun, the process of discovery, right?
Thank you.
Yep. Carla, what do you have?
I was still trying to figure out how to use the anagram server.
Joey, are you ready? I'm sorry, Joey, we could maybe hear one more. Joey, do you have one you would like to share? All right. Well, thank you all for entering into that short walk into using language to build repetition and form. And I would like to now default to Kim.
Here's hoping. Is there an echo? It's good? I'm good? All right. I sorry I didn't get to hear a lot of your talk, Javier, because I was messing around with controls trying to make this work. I'm glad it's working. But I loved what you said. I loved what you said about about energy and about how you would go different places that you wouldn't go otherwise because the language is leading you there. And I think that's a great thing to think about and recognize when you're writing is letting the language lead you to places that you're, because that's like almost like your unconscious mind, right? Instead of your conscious mind thinking, I want to write about this, then when you can kind of let the language lead you, it takes you to places that you wouldn't have gone otherwise. And that's very cool. And that happens with all aspects, I think, of repetition. And in the most formal way, say, if you're trying to write something that rhymes, trying to get to the rhyme leads you to something new that you might not say otherwise. So, any way you can find to subvert your conscious mind is a great tool, as well as working with your conscious mind. And I really appreciate that side of things. I think it's really about bringing those parts of our brains together. The part that knows what it's doing and the part that has no idea, but on the other hand, really does. And that's really interesting to me, is to see what kind of the unconscious coughs up into view that you can then use in some way. So I love that. What I'm going to do is talk a little bit about just kinds of repetition to remind us of what some of them are and give you some examples. Um, and then we can do a quick writing exercise as well. Um, repetition is the basis of all poetry. I think of it really as the basis of all art. Um, and it's a way into reading poetry as well as a way to generating writing and revising it. I think if you notice what repeats in a poem, you will learn a lot. If you just look at what repeats in any poem, you will discover how it's structured, you will discover multiple meanings, you will discover all kinds of things just noticing what repeats. And in terms of your own writing, repetition is part of the music. It's sounds and it's silence, which is what music is. And I love the whole thing about vibration. I think there are poems I've memorized, and I really encourage all of you, if you have not memorized poems, start, because they will stay with you. They will be things that you have that you can recite in all kinds of unexpected situations. Lines will come back and bring you solace. Um, and I really think they create a different vibration in your body when you say them. I know one of the last poem I memorized, which was a while ago now, which means I have to memorize something else now, was The Lake Isle of Innisfree by William Butler Yeats. And every time I say the poem aloud, it calms me. I don't know if I can do it. I'll try. I will arise and go now and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a glade for the, no, a hive for the honeybee, and live alone in the bee loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of morning to where the cricket sings. There midnight's all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping in low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement gray. I hear it in the deep heart's core. And when I say those words, and like the pavement gray, the deep heart's core, I feel that calm. And it's not only his descriptions, which are beautiful, but the very sound of the words, lake water lapping in low sounds by the shore, lake lapping low. It's just low, sure. It's just beautiful. And it puts my whole body in a different state. So I really encourage you to memorize poems and take the sounds into your bodies. Keats called poems breath sculptures. And I think that's wonderful because when you say the words aloud, you are putting into your body the very words that the poet said to him, her, them, self, and and recreating that in some way in your own body as a breath sculpture. So I think that's a wonderful concept, and all of that being related to repetition and music. Repetition grounds us because life itself is repetition, day and night, day, night, day, night, sunrise, moonrise, waxing moon, waning moon. We celebrate holidays every year. We celebrate birthdays, anniversaries. So repetition is really this primal force. And of course, if you listen to certain cultures' music, like African music, I just got to hear uh, Ladysmith Black Mombasa, the group that Paul Simon worked with on Graceland, and I was just at a music festival in San Jose, and they came on and they just did something over and over and over, and we all just started singing this repetitive line, and it just went on and on and on, and we didn't get tired of it. Because we're just, and it's booming from the speakers with all these levels and layers of voices. It was just amazing. So it's just a primal force in human life. And it's something that poetry employs in all kinds of ways. So the more you notice and the more you incorporate it, the more hypnotic and incantatory, I think is the word, your poetry can become. So I just want to run through a couple of things, some of them very obvious, but all good to remember. You can repeat words. Here's the beginning. A sestina, of course, is a formal poem. It's like six line stanzas and then 3 lines at the end. And the end lines of the first stanza are repeated in a different order in every subsequent stanza. And then in the last 3 line stanza, you use all 6 of the words in a certain order. So, very repetitious form, right? And it's not metered, it's not rhyme, but it's got these words that keep coming back. So this is called sestina bob. It's just the beginning. I'll read to you. It's a sestina that uses bob as the end word of every line. So I gave this to I'm doing a workshop right now, a generative workshop. And a couple of my students here are here, I see. Hi, guys. And this is one I gave them for tonight's reading on jealousy, for example. Sestina bob. According to her housemate, she's out with Bob tonight. And when she's out with Bob, you never know when she'll get in. Bob is an English professor. Bob used to be in a motorcycle gang or something, or maybe Bob rides a motorcycle now. How radical of you, Bob. I wish I could ride a motorcycle, Bob, and also talk about Chaucer intelligently. Bob is very tall, bearded, reserved. I saw Bob at a poetry reading last week. He had such a Bob-like poise, so quintessentially Bob, the leather jacket, the granny glasses, the beard, Bob. And that goes on for 6 stanzas. And you can see what a great repetition that is, to take this form and to just make it all the same word, and how perfectly that suits what he's talking about. Because if you're jealous of your lover or they have a new lover, Bob, 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 that's on your mind. So I think that's a great example of the form and content kind of marrying and having a reason to be there. Repetition with reason is a great combination. So another one, syntax. Okay, syntax is a huge one. We're talking interesting sentences. So with Whitman, for example, the great repeater of syntax, I'll read you a brief sample and listen to not only words here and singing, for example, as we start out, but the way the sentences are put together is the thing that repeats. I hear America singing, the varied carols I hear, those of mechanics, each one singing his as it should be, blithe and strong. The carpenter singing his as he measures his plank or beam, the mason singing his as he makes ready for work or leaves off work, the boatman singing what belongs to him in his boat, the deckhand singing on the steamboat deck, the shoemaker singing as he sits on his bench, the hatter singing as he stands, the woodcutter's song, the plowboy's on his way in the morning, or at noon intermission, or at sundown. The delicious singing of the mother, of the young wife at work, or of the girl sewing or washing, each singing what belongs to him or her and to none else, the day what belongs to the day, at night the party of young fellows, robust, friendly, singing with open mouths their strong melodious songs. Just a little section, but so much repeats. I hear America singing, the varied carols I hear, those of mechanics, each one singing, the carpenter singing, the mason singing, the boatman singing. But notice it's also noun, verb, carpenter singing, mason singing, boatman singing, deckhand singing, where? On the steamboat deck, shoemaker singing, as he sits on his bench, as he stands, or at noon intermission, or at sundown. So, all of these parallelisms, what we're talking about here, which is when, these little units line up. So they just kind of go into sync. And we might not even recognize it as like, well, here's a bunch of repeated prepositional phrases, but you will pick it up anyway. Your ear will pick it up. You pick it up at a level you may not even realize. As poets, I think it's our job to realize and recognize on some level, to get as much of that into our listening and therefore into our writing as we can. And Whitman is just, wonderful for the way he uses syntax, sentence structure. Xavier did the thing with Ginsberg, right? That wonderful boom bomb, bing bang bong bomb piece. Sounds are so incredible, and so much of Ginsberg as well lives, so much of his energy lives in his syntax. If you listen to the beginning of I'm not America, Howl, of course, Howl. And you listen to what he's doing there, he's doing all kinds of really weird things that you don't expect in syntax. For example, who poverty and tatters and hollow-eyed and high sat up smoking in the supernatural darkness of cold water flats. Who poverty and tatters and hollow-eyed and high. Okay, you understand hollow-eyed and high. Those are adjectives. He stuck them, before. I mean, it's a little weird the way he stuck them in, but poverty and tatters are noun. What's he doing? Going, who poverty and tatters and hollow-eyed and high sat up smoking. So right there, you've got something strange going on, some sort of rearrangement. And if you try to copy that, which is a great exercise, copying syntax, excuse me, you will see how much energy, no matter what words you put to it, the energy is there. So syntax is a big one. Not often enough covered by anyone, including myself, but pay attention and you'll learn a lot. Sounds, of course, rhyme. Rhyme is call and response. Ooh, oh sounds can create a lament. If you think of Sylvia Plath's daddy, you, as Plath would say it, you do not do any more, black shoe, in which I have lived like a, what did she say, a foot, dead and white these 30 years. Ooh, 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 ach du, daddy, you bastard, I'm through. Those ooh sounds create a real feeling of lament or a cooing, and they run through the entire poem. The entire poem is built on those sounds. So pick a sound and try to create, a poem around a sound. That would be a really interesting exercise. There are hard sounds and soft sounds. You can crack open a bottle of Malbec by the creek with your back against a rock, or you can enjoy a Chardonnay as you loll by the river beside a smooth stone. Right? Very different subtleties of sound and meaning, and you change the mood entirely. You're saying essentially the same thing. The difference between crack open a bottle of Malbec by the creek with your back against a rock, or enjoy a Chardonnay as you loll by the river beside a smooth stone. There might be a snake in the grass by that smooth stone. You could build on that sound and suddenly bring in a hissing of some kind to kind of disrupt the mood, but those are the kinds of things. And some of this you may do naturally or organically. Some of it you may have to learn a little bit mechanically at first, but trust that somewhere in the back of your brain, the little elves are working, and the elves are in there engineering all kinds of things that you may not be aware of. So in thinking about this, I went back to a book by Mary Oliver called A Poetry Handbook, which is a nice little book that covers a few different things, but one of them is sound. And she talks about Frost's famous poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, which probably everybody knows. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. I think most of it can recite it by memory, never having tried to memorize it. It's that kind of poem. Um, but she pays a lot of attention to the sounds of that poem and how they work with meaning. And when I was looking at her analysis of the songs of that apparently simple little poem, I came across this quote that I thought was just so perfect for what we're talking about today. And it's this. And the end of it, of course, is "and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep." She says, "Miles, that soft sound, representative of all one's difficult mortal years, floats above the heavy mutes pacing the end of the line, go, before, sleep." A mute is sort of where, the voice ends rather than going on. It is not only the transcendence in meaning, but the sound of the transcendence that enables it to work. With the wrong sounds, it could not have happened. And it was Javier's title for this, that included transcendence, that made me hit that quote and go, aha, yes, transcendence. Not only transcendence in meaning, but the sound of the transcendence. And that's what makes it happen. That's the combination of, as Frost said, sound should be an echo to the sense. But that idea that what you're saying, the meaning on the level of that kind of meaning, because as Eliot said, meaning is everything you get from a poem is what it means. But that idea of what you've come to say and the sound with which you say it coming together is just, the most beautiful thing. Javier mentioned refrain, saying that the refrain might be, find the center of your poem, find the core of your poem, find the heart of your poem. I think about that in those terms, the heart, the spine, the core. And that's a great concept for a refrain, for a repeated line, like a chorus in a song. Poe has "Quoth the Raven, nevermore." Anne Sexton, in her poem called, what's it called? It's a poem in masturbation. I can't remember what it's called. Oh, something like Song of the Lonely Masturbator. And the line is, "At night alone I marry the bed. At night alone I marry the bed. At night alone I marry the bed." And that repeats over and over. So a refrain, Galway Cannell has a poem called "When One Has Lived a Long Time Alone." And each stanza begins and ends. So when one has lived a long time alone, launches you into some scene. And then the last line is "when one has lived a long time alone." So it's bookended by those refrains. So again, he launches you from that and he returns to that. Another kind of repetition, circularity, beginning and ending, beginning, circling back. Couple more I want to mention. Repeating images, an object like a bowl or a snowfall. And look at how the repetition can develop in a poem. A bowl starts out intact but gets broken. This is also, narrative. Narrative, whether you're writing a narrative poem or you're watching a film, a story in a film, story, objects in stories return and change. So a bowl at the beginning that's intact might get broken, or conversely, a bowl that's broken might get repaired. If it rains, that might turn into a storm later. So things constantly are moving and developing. They're not staying still, which I think, when I think about repetition, I think there's a balance between stillness and the way that we loop back and get grounded by a repeated word or phrase or object or whatever it is. But then there's also that movement, so that relationship of stillness and movement is like sound and silence, right? And that's music as well. So objects, colors, a poem you can study for this. Take a look at Elizabeth Bishop's First Death in Nova Scotia, which is a beautiful poem about a young girl whose cousin dies, and she doesn't know what death is. And it's really a poem about how this girl cannot understand death. And she looks at her little cousin Arthur, but she's noticing other things like this mallard, carved mallard on the mantle, and snow and things, colors, the white colors, white and red, keep coming back in this poem. And it's really about this little girl trying to understand the hugeness of death, and the colors are something that keep anchoring us to that understanding and lack of understanding. Take a look at what she does in that poem. It's a really beautiful example of how the colors work. Um, so that's basically it. Repetition, things that repeat are important. So that goes back to the idea, if there's a central idea in your poem, use it as a refrain. Why? Because you want to repeat the things that are important. This is absolutely the principle of fake news, right? Repeat it long enough and people will start to believe it. Say it over and over and over, and people begin to go, well, where there's smoke, there's fire. That will happen. So the more that you repeat something, the more it enters our brain and begins to convince us. So in the opposite direction, if you use it for some kind of truth, some kind of emotional or spiritual truth about life, whatever your truth is, keep repeating it. And that will be a way not only to sort of anchor it and make people pay attention, but also hopefully move something forward, because too much repetition in our lives and we get stasis, right? We get bored. We get bored by our routines, like, oh my God, I need a vacation. Let's do something different. Same thing in poetry. Too much repetition can be hypnotic. It can be hypnotic, but you go beyond, there's a tipping point, and suddenly it feels like, okay, I've heard it already. Let's move on. And it's finding that balance that can be really tricky, but really crucial for writing. So too much produces stasis, too little produces chaos. And art is not chaotic. It might traffic in chaos, it might employ chaos, but in the end, I think all art is patterned in the end, even if it's a very general pattern. Like, what's the name of the piece by, I'm just blanking. What's the famous 3 minutes, 22 seconds by the, uh, God, it's right on the tip of my tongue and I can't think of him. Javier, you know who I'm talking about. That guy, John Cage.
Cage. Yeah.
Yes, John Cage. That 3 minutes, 22 seconds or something is the title. And the guy comes in, he sits at the piano, and he doesn't play. And what happens for the next however many minutes and seconds is the piece. So that sounds like total chaos, and how can you call that a piece of music? But there is a framework. Even if it's a very light and a very general framework, there is a framework imposed upon the chaotic. So from that extreme to something really like a rhymed and metered poem, and everything in between, there is pattern. So, so that's basically what I wanted to say about those things. And I thought, let's try a sound exercise, just to see what happens with this. And the sound exercise is this. Take a simple sentence. I took a walk today and looked around. Or I took a walk today and looked at the scenery. That's your basic sentence. So what I want you to try to do is amplify and expand on that in two ways. First, try to create a soft, relaxed mood. What you might see on a walk around the block, or looking out the window, even if you don't want to go for a walk in your mind. Describe some scenery. Describe something that might happen on a walk around your block or the city, or a walk through your town or in the countryside, and try to make it soothing and appealing, both in the things you describe and how you describe them. One thing you might try is some low sounds in there, like some ooh and ah. You might try it for some consonants like L or M or N or R, and see if that leads you into something very peaceful. Then the second part is create a very different mood. It's like that Malbec with your back against a rock as you crack the bottle. Maybe describe some of the same things using words, with letters like D and K and a hard C and a T. Those kinds of sounds, and see if you can create something a little more jangly. Okay, so see what you do with that. What should we take? 5 minutes, 10? Let's take, is 10 too long? How long are we doing this for, Jen? Anyone?
We have 2 hours, so still another hour.
Okay, well then let's take 10 minutes and see what comes out of this. So one walk around the block is very, very soothing, very chill, and another walk around the block that is meant to kind of drive us nuts and see what happens. Okay? All right, let's go from there. I'll set my timer and it'll ring when we come back. Okay, that was about 10 minutes. Would love to hear if anybody wants to read one or both of their descriptions, or maybe even just a line that you got that you felt good about, that you felt like kind of fit right in. It feels kind of mechanical at first to do this, um, but then the back of your brain will take over at some point. So just wonder if anybody wants to share that. Lynn? Hi,
I have a
Lynn.
question too. I'm wondering if you can turn your microphone up. It seems a little soft on my end.
It's pretty high. Now it's as high as it goes. Maybe turn your computer mic up.
Actually, I'm on my iPad. So I'm going to read a couple lines from my chaotic part of my walk. My second walk yields loud caw-caws, blackness flying around, lifting and diving quickly, causing me to be edgy, causing me to recall earlier summer trauma when I was an enemy of the crows, post-traumatic crow disorder. 3 dive bombing me at once every time I went into the house. Their loud caws today take me back. Add that to the heat already building and the slightest hint of smoke.
Nice. I love all the caca crows, and post-traumatic crow syndrome is fabulous. Thank you, Lynn. And those E sounds too, that's another thing that really, it's like chalk on a blackboard almost. Nice. Anybody else? I'm gonna read a line or two. Anne Gwen. Hi, Anne Gwen.
Realized I had to unmute. Okay, I have the second one, the climby one. I take a walk today, crossing the cussed crosswalk. I heel fist Big Dick's combustion lid as he led revs to escape my cursing eyes.
Yes, great, great. Nice job. Fantastic. Anyone else? Lots of mute black boxes here. Anyone else? Now's your chance. Okay, well, people may be keeping it to themselves. I feel like I should call on a couple of my students now because Javier did that. Mark, do you have anything for us, maybe? You there? You're muted.
Yes. Yeah.
Anything you want to read? A line or so?
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I did one of each. I eased down the road with the beagle, moving smoothly into the arroyo. We swished past the acacias, avoiding the cholla. And the rat terrier and I walked directly toward the cave, clomping over the quartzite and kicking aside the cans and other detritus of the county's construction project, stalking the elk.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, those hard K sounds really, I think they're one thing that just really does that, just feels like that. Yeah, nice, Mark. Anyone else? Jane, did you get anything you want to read to us? You're muted.
Yes. Hi, hi, Kim. I tried what you did with describing the same thing, but in two different ways. I went for a stroll at sunrise, just as the flowers lost their dew, and while the pavement was still cool, my shoes slipped softly on the sidewalk, and slowly I began to lope loosely along, feeling the first warming breath of the sun.
Nice.
Then I transposed it too. I walked out my door in near darkness, too early for the sun to really be up. Even the flowers were drooping as if tired. My shoes began to slap the cool pavement, first with short thunks, then chugging, then like pistons, with the wind spitting in my face, until at last the first cold rays of an early sun hit my skin.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. You can really you can really hear it when somebody's working with sound. You know, you can really hear the difference between all those sounds really working towards something or just a sort of random, yeah, I went out today and this is what happened. You know, so it's wonderful to really hear the difference in those two. Does anybody else want to do it? Anyone kind of on the fence? We can just sort of give you a little push. Okay, maybe not. Um, well, so what I was thinking was that it might be interesting, Javier, I don't know if you want to do this, but I thought maybe we could each read a poem of ours that uses repetition and kind of talk about what kind of repetition it's using and how it's working. And then if we still have time, we could throw it open to some questions from you all. Is that, do you have one you want to read, Javier, or do you want to look for something or?
No, I can do one. And so this is actually a good exercise kind of place that I go sometimes, and it's called the Forest of Rhetoric. So if you just type in the Forest of Rhetoric, it'll take you to the website, and it gives I mean it seems like hundreds of rhetorical figures, right? So every rhetorical figure that is a rhetorical figure is listed. But what I like about it is because sometimes reading about rhetorical figures or patterns and with language sometimes is a little bit like it'll be hard for me to understand exactly. So what I like about the Forest of Rhetoric is that it gives you an example. So it'll say what the rhetorical figure is, and then it'll give you an example, and then it makes sense. And often the examples often are Shakespeare. So those of you who have studied Shakespeare, I'm sure you know that Shakespeare was a master of using rhetorical figures within the way compositions were going. So this is called rhetorical figures in a bullet, and it's anaphora, it's chiasmus, diacope, and polypuncton. Rhetorical
I
figures
don't
in a
know what those are. I
I
know the
know.
first couple three, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And I try to use them in each example. So rhetorical figures in a bullet crossing the border. My brothers and sisters are dying in train cars, overcome by 100-degree days. My brothers and sisters die. They are carried like cargo along Interstate 8 in the trunks of automobiles, as American as piñatas in the aisles of Walmart in rural towns across the Midwest. My brothers and sisters are carrying the weight of return tickets to Mexico, Cuba, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador. They need us to care. My brothers and sisters are being shot at in Mexico while thinking of crossing the border in San Ysidro, named for the patron saint of farmers near San Diego. My brothers and sisters are bleeding to death from gunshot wounds by American Border Patrol agents in El Paso, Texas. They have bled from chest wounds, from shoulder wounds, from leg wounds, from wounds left open. My brothers and sisters bleed. On June 8th, 2010, a 15-year-old Mexican citizen was shot to death on the Mexican side of the border near El Paso. Passport stampless. Bullets, bullets. Passport stampless.
Yeah. Thank you, Javier. So the Forest of Rhetoric, what was it that you used from that, or how did you use that?
So if you just type it in like the Forster Rhetoric, it'll take you to the site, and then you can just it's A through Z of every rhetorical figure that we have in the English language, and and then it won't just it'll give you the description of it too, like anaphora, maybe a repetition of a word or phrase, but then it'll show you an example of it, right? It's kind of like it's a way of, everyone learns different, and I think I'm someone who learns by looking at examples and then seeing the language that describes that example. And so you'll get examples of it, and then I often will imitate an example, and then try to loosen it up. Once I feel like I have command of the figure, then I'll loosen it up and sort of use it in what I need it for, how it can serve me in a poem.
Great, very good. Yeah, I mean, I feel like Google and the internet have made me such a smarter poet than I used to be. I mean, I'm still a dumb person, but you know, I can fake it with Google. I learn all kinds of cool things that I end up importing into poems, and I sound like an intelligent human being, but much more so than I actually am. um, my TV binge watching self. So it's great to, I love these resources, the anagram generator and the forest of rhetoric, because yeah, I just took a look at it as you were talking, and there's 1 million terms that you can kind of learn and practice and go, well, let me try this one. Because anaphora, I think most of us know that. We've all experimented with anaphora, and that's an easy one. Epistrophe, where the repetition is at the end of the line instead of the beginning. There are chiasmus, which is that crossing um, um, of words sort of on one side and the other side. And there's a couple of them I know, but there's so many more, and it's so interesting to really explore how those work, because that's the nuts and bolts of our language, right? That's the bones of our language.
Yep.
And the more you kind of learn about that, the more tools you have to work with and play with in your
And
life.
where it really serves me is, I work in trauma. Like, really, the only thing I really write about is traumatic moments, traumatic experiences. And what I found is that if I use a form to enter into those spaces, it's like one layer that sort of protects my emotion. And because you're looking at the craft of the sentiment rather than just the raw emotion of the experience. And so if any of you are working with trauma or working with abuse, abuse is trauma, but it's really helpful. And even like how Kim had mentioned the sestina, even forms of poetry, it sort of goes against Hugo's idea to not let the composition conform to the form, but let it follow the music. So it sort of begins that way. But like sestinas, villanelles, anything like that can be a layer between you and the actual traumatic moment that you're re-encountering. So it's helpful.
Right, right, exactly. And there's catharsis in that, in getting something that's inside outside of you and putting it in a shape. It's just so. And psychotherapy, I know, talks about the same thing. And Anne Sexton was encouraged, thank God, by her analyst to write. God knows where we'd be without her poems, or where she'd be. It probably kept her alive a lot longer to write and to put it into writing. So it's a very powerful thing, I think, to write a poem, both personally and interpersonally. Yeah. Well, I'm going to read you one that occurred to me because of your anagram thing, Javier. And so this actually came from, I sort of stole it as a strategy from Terence Hayes, but it fits right in with the anagram thing you were talking about, because this is a poem where every end word in the line is an anagram that can be made out of the title. Not a pure anagram, because it doesn't use every single word in the title, but more sort of like a Scrabble anagram, where you have a bunch of letters, and these are some of the words you can make out of them, not necessarily using all the letters. But I'll read it to you and then just say a little more about that. This is called Lives of the Poets. One stood among, and there are references to a lot of poets, so you may pick up some and not others, but I'll run through them afterwards. One stood among the violets listening to a bird. One went to the toilet and was struck by the moon. One felt hopeless until a trumpet crash, and then lo, he became a diamond. I have a shovel. Can I turn it into a poem? On my stove, I'm boiling some milk thistle. I hope it will turn into a winged thesis before you stop reading. Look, I'm topless. Listen, approaching hooves. One drowned in a swimming pool. One removed his shoes and yearned off a bridge. One lives with Alzheimer's in a state facility, spittle in his white beard. It turns out words are no help. But here I am with my shovel, digging like a fool beside the spilth and splosh of the ungirdled sea. I can't stop. The horses are coming, the thieves. I still haven't found lasting love. I still want to hear viols in the little beach hotel that's torn down and gone. I want to see again the fish schooling and glittering like a veil where the waves shove against the breakwater. Gone is the girl in her white slip, testing the chill with one bare foot. It's too cold, but she goes in so carefully. Oh. So that's a piece where all of the letters of the end words, all these end words can be found in the phrase lives of the poets. So it's violets, toilet, hopeless, low, shovel, stove, thistle, thesis, topless, all of them. So what that does when you scramble the letters like that is it creates a wonderful sound quality. You don't always get rhymes, but you do sometimes, like right away, violets and toilet. You get so and oh at the end. You get hotel, and a couple lines later, you get veil. You get thieves and love. So because you're using some of the same letters, you end up getting all of these sound echoes that make it feel kind of glued together. And the thing that Javier mentioned earlier, you go places you wouldn't go. So I had a whole list of words and thought, how do I get to that word? How do I get to that word? In what order? And just began sort of riffing and playing with those things, trying to come up with something, and also come up with something that, sounded not completely cray-cray and illogical, but actually had some kind of a spine and some kind of a direction to it. And there's use of anaphora too, 1, 1, 1, that gets repeated, so that's what I did to sort of fool with. Again, it's that concept of starting from language, right? And letting the language lead you somewhere, into something new, into something different, into something you didn't know you had to say, but it turns out you did have to say. So that's kind of the beauty of it. And I thought that might be a good example because of what Javier led us to earlier with the anagrams. That's from the Scrabble word finder. So you can put words in there and it's the same thing. You can get anagrams of the letters that you put in. And Terrence Hayes is the one that I owe a debt of gratitude to for disclosing his strategy. And I've used it in a few different poems of scrambling titles in that Scrabble word finder, and then going to use them as the end words of lines. So I think maybe we have time to throw it open to you guys if you have some questions for us. Anything that you want to ask or bring up related to repetition and some of these ideas we've been throwing out. Questions, thoughts, comments, things you've discovered in your writing?
Jane?
Yeah, I have a question. I love the sort of beautiful playfulness of these generators and everything. Can you give some examples of some spectacular failures? Has there been a time where it's sort of like you say, it's gone off the rails, but you haven't been able to bring it back in a way that, so there is no spine there.
Well, all the things you've never seen from us. All the things that have never seen print, which is a mountain of things. Those are the ones that just went sideways and could not be achieved.
But it's also a question of aesthetic, kind of what's like, what is good art versus bad art, right? If those two things can live. I often say failure is the only option, right? And what I mean by that is that you have to give yourself permission to get wild, right? You have to, I really encourage failure on the page. If I consider myself an experimental poet, then that means 99% of everything I do is failure. But it's that 1% that succeeds that does it, right? And even the process of failing in composition is such a rewarding moment, right? So it's like, it's like a dance. Kind of try to take yourself back to your adolescent, youth, how frightening dancing was, right? Or asking someone to dance. But when you're uninhibited about your body and your mind, your consciousness basically is what we're talking about here, then you really get a chance to play. Like, this idea of poetry at play. So it's a playful moment. It's playing with your subconscious. It's allowing things to come out, or it's going on a walk. Like, how many of you, all of us, right? You go to a new town, a new place. You go for a walk because you want to see what's there. You want to discover what's there. I really want to leave everyone with this notion of that when you compose, you're going for a walk into yourself, and you don't know where it is, right? You don't know where you're going. And then secondly, for a reader, I'm always interested in the unreliable narrator. I'm not that interested if I feel safe, there's no reason to hold the writer's hand as we enter into the composition, right? If it's predictable, there's no reason to hold the speaker of the poem's hand as we enter into the composition. But if I'm like going, whoa, what's going on? Then I'm holding on and I'm interested, and I'll go on the journey. So there's a little bit of that there, I think, in that response.
Yeah. Looks like Eugenia has a question.
I don't have a question. Well, I don't like being recorded, but that's why I don't use this when it's through high cam. I'll talk to you when I see it, Lifties. But no, I just say it's completely subjective, right? Like, I had a thing, I was talking to a friend who used to have actual, when I was talking about how it used to be to have a cassette that you had in your fucking phone machine. And I wrote one piece where I just had sentences from pieces, sentences from people who had left me on my phone machine. And I had just put it, I never but this other poet I know loves it. She just mentioned, she said, oh my God, and that's old, but you don't know. And the other pieces you'll love, and people think it's shit. So it's completely subjective.
Oh, you're talking about just good art and bad art. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, those things change all the time. Standards and conceptions and aesthetics and all of that. Yeah. I think though that we recognize real poetry. I really have seen that. I've seen uh, performances and readings where, people go on and, people are sort of listening, but there are some people that stand up and there's a quality of attention from the audience that you can feel. And that I felt that with different writers where I feel, yes, I am in the presence of true poetry. And I do think that there is something that you can feel that, of course, it depends what your receptors are like. If you have really dulled receptors, maybe you don't feel it or hear it. But I think you can. I think there is a wavelength that poetry can hit that a majority of people kind of recognize as, oh, this is something. And I don't think that's the case with all writing, because And I do think you can distinguish at least at the extremes between good writing and bad writing, because I think of bad writing as something that dulls us and puts us to sleep, and good writing is something that wakes us up. And part of that is what the surprise that Javier was talking about, the surprise of language, the unexpected, the thing that makes you sit up and become aware of the things we get inured to in our lives, because everything becomes like wallpaper and we can't see it anymore. So those things that wake us up to life, the language that wakes us up to life, that's, I would say, my definition of a good piece of writing. And I think I can distinguish between a piece of writing that does that for me and one that I feel is dulling my senses and telling me what I already know and have heard a million times.
Well, I agree with you on that.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
but I'm just saying, well, I will never, Dylan doesn't have to apologize for anything. I don't care if he, I mean, for me, but some people just fucking hate part one language. Will hate him. So that's all I'm saying. For me, yes, I agree with you. I agree.
There's a lot of wiggle room in there. There's a lot of wobbling that goes on. Yeah. Anyone else want to weigh in with a question or a comment or a thought about the proceedings for the past hour and some? Jen?
Great, it was great.
I'm a little curious where you find that tipping point where maybe these generators or these different tools can become almost kind of a hindrance or too much of a dependence, or where it's I guess it's a spectrum where you can lean on it too much, or it's more way in the background where it's just generating things and getting ideas that infiltrates itself into other poetry that is already sparked in different ways. So I was wondering if you could expand on that a little bit. Either one of you.
Yeah. Javier, do you want to say anything about that?
No, go ahead.
I guess, I think maybe what you're talking about, or one aspect of it anyway, is sort of the pyrotechnics of, the cleverness can overwhelm something else. Like, okay, here's a bunch of cool sounds and it's going on, but, after a while you're kind of like, okay, these fireworks are nice, but I want to sort of see a star or something real, I think that can happen. I think you can become too clever or too glib, if and you're right, there's a tipping point, there's a balance, like anything. And I think there's sort of I remember years ago when I was at Breadloaf, Ellen Bryant Voigt talking about the formal impulse versus the sort of impulse of meaning, and how they can sometimes, one can be at odds with the other. Like your formal impulse says, I want it to be this rhythm, but it destroys the meaning, or the meaning overwhelms the impulse to sort of make it musical. I think there's always sort of a negotiation between those poles, or between many poles, probably, conscious and unconscious, form and content, and, sound and sense. I think all those things are sort of, spinning around together in the little language universe, and we're trying to find that sweet spot where it all kind of comes together, and you have not only the wonderful language that is attractive, and the rhythms, and the right rhythms, but also the heart and the soul and the spirit that's there. And you can certainly do stuff that's just flarf, right? That was a movement. I don't know if those guys are still around, but they would just take a bunch of gobbledygook from the internet. And, it's great as an experiment to sort of push the envelope and go to the outer edges of the universe. But at some point, I think you need to bounce back a little and think about life on Earth and how we connect to each other. And that's, for me, the guiding principle is trying to connect. Language that connects and doesn't alienate. Surprise, yes, but complete mystification or alienation, I just want to run screaming from the room when I read that stuff. It makes me feel stupid. I don't want to feel stupid in a poem. I want to feel like, okay, maybe the poem could be a little smarter than I am, but I'm really intrigued and I want to learn what it knows. but I don't want to feel stupid. And, that's what happens when things get too opaque and too just blitzkrieg of language. And that's somebody else's project, but it's not mine anyway. I don't know, Javier, what do you have to say about all that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that, and I use them as ingredients, right? So that you're still making a composition, or you're still making a meal, or whatever metaphor you want to give it. It needs other things, right? So craft has to be there, and this is sort of the maybe, I look for interesting language or things that I wouldn't say naturally, right? But all of it, I always have this thing: two truths and a lie. And a truth is an image, and a lie is an abstraction, right? Or a tell. You can say, I love you, but that's a lie. It's an abstraction. But as soon as you give it an image, I love you, I feel like the big boat going off to Korea. Now, the image of the big boat going off to Korea carries the emotional weight of the love. But it's the same thing. Here's I hate you. I feel like the big boat going off to Korea, right? Like the same image can carry any emotion. I'm so excited. I feel like the big boat going off to Korea, right? So that you need truths, which are images, right? And even fragmented images, a leaf across a field, a bending branch, right? A wadded up piece of gum, a spilt cup of milk, a wad of paper wet on my desk. And maybe the poem's called Last Night's Date, right? I mean, and then the title gives it context, right? Too. It changes everything. So I love technology, similar to what Kim was saying. Like, honestly, like the first bit of technology that made it possible for me to be a writer was spell check, right? Like if I had to hand spell or just spell in general, like, it's hard to go past that first hurdle. But we have all these tools at our disposal now, and in research, or I mean, but honest to God, it's the dictionary that does it for me, because I see words in there all the time that look exciting and look interesting and sound interesting, and I just place them. I just energize the poem. Remember, energy, subjects, leaps, and words. And the leaping is the thing that Kim's talking about. The not boring your reader and predictability, right? So yeah, it's almost like it's a spice. It's a little bit of flour, or it's an egg. It's sort of a part of the things we use to cook, but it's not the only thing we're cooking in the pot, right?
I love that. Because you don't want the spices to overwhelm the taste of the dish, whatever it is, right? The main dish. They're there to accent it or to bring out the flavor. So if the meat or the chicken or the tofu for the vegetarians is the main thing, you don't want to obscure it with all of the hyperbole and all the other stuff that's going on. You want to try to bring something out of it or enhance it. Yeah. The meat of what you're saying. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, well, I feel like this has been a pretty full session, and my cat is gonna attack me if I don't feed it soon, because we're like 45 minutes past his dinner time. Um, I don't know. You guys have anything else you want to add or bring to this?
Great. I loved it. I love it. Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Yes,
A
this has
long
been
time, 89.
this has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you so much, Javier. More of this to come, you guys. LiTFUSE, September 23rd to 25th. Before we end, I just want to say a few things. I want to encourage you to spread the word. We've got some more of these talks coming up with other faculty members. Our next summer event, summer school event is Thursday, August 25th. That's not this coming Thursday, but in just over a week. So show up for that. That'll be Catherine Hunt and Matthias Selena, narrative, lyric, and lyric narration. And remember, even though it's free, you must register ahead of time. So please let people know that. You can head to litfuse.us. You all should know that as you're here. And then other happenings, we have our fuel event in Tieton. It's an on-site, in-person featured reader series, and that will be next Wednesday, not tomorrow, in a week from tomorrow. And Alberto Siam will be joining us he's the programs assistant for public programs and youth programs at Literary Arts in Portland. He's a young, innovative poet, just finished up his MFA, now working for the good of poetry. And anyway, that event is in Tieton at the fueling station, 6:15 light dinner and drinks. And Alberto will share with us, and then followed by open mic if you want to come and share if you're anywhere near. And then, of course, LiTFUSE Unite, our annual poetry weekend workshop, where Javier and Kim are both going to be there. It's filling up. Classes are starting to fill, so get registered and get ready for a great weekend of learning, connecting, and writing inspiration. And then, of course, there's other stuff going on at Tieton Arts and Humanities. And just thank you, Kim and Javier. It's been a wonderful evening. So much to learn and hold on to, inspire our writing. We hope to see you back next week for our next summer school session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Everybody, thanks so much. Really fun. And Javier, I look forward to seeing you in person.
Yeah, I can't
I
wait.
didn't know how to pronounce that.
Will the transcript be available?
With all my F.
Yes.
I don't know. You have to ask Jen.
Yes, the transcript will be available and most likely the recording.
Awesome.
We'll
Great.
keep you posted.
Thank
Good
you,
to see
everyone.
Thank you all for being here.
Everybody. Real
Bye,
pleasure.
everybody.
All right. See
Thank
some of
you.
in Washington, I hope. Okay. Bye.